Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the secret recipe that powers pretty much every business you can think of, from your local coffee shop all the way up to a massive car factory. We are diving into the theory of production.
Okay, so to get us started, let's kick things off with a little brain teaser. On one hand, you have a solid, physical thing like a table. On the other, you have a service, something intangible, like a taxi ride. They seem like they're worlds apart, right? But in the eyes of an economist, they share something absolutely fundamental.
And the answer, believe it or not, is value. Both of them are the end result of production, which is really just the process of creating value, or what economists have a special word for, utility.
Now, this is a super important point. Production isn't some kind of magic where you create matter out of thin air. You can't just create wood. But what a carpenter can do is take that wood and add utility to it by turning it into a table. They've made it way more useful, way more valuable than it was as just a log. That's production.
So, how do we create this value, this utility? Well, it turns out there are four main ways. You've got form utility, that's our carpenter changing the shape of the wood. Then there's place utility. Think about getting apples from a farm to a grocery store in the city. There's time utility, like storing grain after a harvest so we can eat it months later. And finally, you have personal utility, which is all about services, the skill of a great doctor or a teacher. So, every single production recipe needs its core ingredients, like flour, eggs, and sugar for a cake. In the world of economics, we call these the four factors of production.
First up is land. And I don't just mean a patch of dirt. In economics, this is huge. It's basically everything that nature gives us for free to work with. The water, the minerals, the forests, even the air.
Next, of course, you need people. That's labor. This is the human element, right? It's the brain power and the muscle that people put in to turn those natural resources into something useful. We're talking about the factory worker, the software coder, the person driving the delivery van. It's all human effort.
Then we have capital. And look, it's really easy to think this just means cash, but that's not it. In production theory, capital is all the man-made stuff we use to make other stuff. It's the hammer, the computer, the factory building itself. They're all tools we've already produced to help us produce more.
And finally, the special ingredient, our master chef, the entrepreneur. This is the visionary, the organizer. This is the person who takes the land, the labor, and the capital, brings them all together with a business idea, and, this is crucial, takes on the risk that the whole thing might just fail.
Okay, so you've got all your ingredients, but how you mix them together, well, that's where it gets really interesting. What happens if you have a fixed-size kitchen, let's say one factory, and you just keep adding more and more chefs? There's actually a fundamental rule that explains what happens next.
This brings us to a really key concept that applies in the short run when at least one of your ingredients, like your factory, is fixed. It's officially called the law of variable proportions, but I bet you've heard of it by its more common name, the law of diminishing returns.
Let's make this real. Check out this table. As we add more people, that's the labor column, the total amount of stuff we make, the total product, goes up. Great, right? But, and this is the key, look at that marginal product column. That's the extra bit of output you get from each new person. See how it starts high, but then it drops and keeps dropping until it hits zero, and then whoa, it even goes negative? That's the law right there in action.
This whole process plays out in three distinct stages. First up, stage one, increasing returns. In the beginning, things are awesome. Adding your first few people lets you divide up the work, get specialized, efficiency is just through the roof, and your output is climbing fast. Then you hit stage two, diminishing returns. And this is the sweet spot, really. Your total output is still going up, but that fixed kitchen of yours is starting to feel a little crowded. Each new worker still helps, yeah, but they're contributing just a little bit less than the person who came before them. Your efficiency is starting to decline.
And finally, you stumble into stage three, negative returns. This is the classic too many cooks in the kitchen scenario. Literally, people are bumping into each other, they're getting in each other's way. Adding one more person at this point is actually counterproductive. Your total output starts to go down.
So here's the bottom line. A smart, rational business owner is never going to operate in stage one. Because why would you stop when you could still get even more efficient? And they are absolutely not going to be in stage three, where you're basically paying someone to mess things up and reduce your output. The only logical place to be is right there in stage two.
All right, so that covers the short run, when your kitchen size is fixed. But what happens in the long run, when you can change everything?
What if you can build a whole new, bigger kitchen, not just hire more chefs? Well, that's when we start talking about scaling up.
This is known as returns to scale, and it's all about answering a pretty simple question. If I double all of my inputs across the board, do I get exactly double the output? As it turns out, the answer isn't always so simple.
And there are basically 3 ways this can play out. You could get increasing returns to scale, you double your inputs, and you get more than double the output because of new efficiencies. Awesome. You might get constant returns, double in, double out, perfectly proportional. Or, if a company gets too big, too bureaucratic, it can hit decreasing returns to scale, where doubling all your inputs actually gives you less than double the output.
We've looked at the ingredients, the rules for the short run and the rules for the long run. So what does it all boil down to? What's the big takeaway for finding that perfect production recipe?
It really comes down to this. First, production isn't just making things, it's about creating value. Second, it always needs those 4 key ingredients. In the short term, you have to navigate that law of diminishing returns to stay efficient. And in the long term, your growth is all about how well you manage your returns to scale. Real success is all about finding the optimal, most efficient combination of everything.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. Every business, every project, every creative endeavor has its own production recipe. So take a second to think about what you do. What are your key ingredients? And are you using the most effective recipe you can to create value?